Pam, you have appointments not just to the Fuller Youth Institute, but also to the Thrive Center. And at the Thrive Center, you're deeply engaged in the questions of positive psychology, positive development. And I'd love to know how your work at the Thrive Center might be of interest and relevance to folks out there trying to put together and improve their youth ministries.
Absolutely. No, I think the Thrive Center is a great resource. We really do draw on psychology and very informed by this movement of positive psychology, but I think it has really important implications for the church. So we're passionate about understanding what it means for kids to thrive and how to enable kids to thrive. And we realize that thriving is not a destination. Like, we all don't get to one place where we thrive. There's no one set way of thriving. But thriving has to do with being on a pathway to a hopeful future. We all know said pathways in life are not linear. There's ups and downs, so it's how we make good of the downs. And it has to do with living a meaningful life and also that sense of contribution that I've talked about. So it's not just about me, but I like to say me thrives when we thrive. So we flip the me on the head, and it's a corporate thriving. I thrive when the people around me thrive. But this is all based on kind of the tenets of positive youth development, which I think are great for the church. And the first is PYD, as we refer to it, is a movement that is really strength-based. So we look at what's going right with kids, and one of the traditional mantras of PYD is that youth are not problems to be dealt with, but they're resources to be developed. And so often in our culture, kids are seen as problems waiting to happen. Oh, they're loud, they dress weird, let's put them in the other building. Let's not listen to their music. But kids are resources to be developed. So PYD focuses on kids' strengths. And it's also extremely optimistic. I mentioned plasticity. We're always focused on there is a potential for change. So as Christians, we tend to be really optimistic, but I think this way of thinking helps youth pastors see kids as resources to be developed. How can I cultivate their skills? How can I help them leverage their competencies, their interests? And then the second to last thing that we look at is that development happens as a person interacts with their context. So we're always looking for resources around kids. So if you have a PYD lens and you're looking at a congregation, you can identify different resources in the congregation, whether it's older people that might be able to mentor a youth, or if it's a library that has books, or just different resources within the church that can promote this positive development in kids or the greater community. And the last thing, positive youth development emphasizes this expectation to contribute back, which is really important. In the field of psychology, we often talk about flourishing and we talk about thriving. And flourishing doesn't necessarily connotate this notion of giving to something beyond the self. It has more to do with living a meaningful, happy, pleasant life where I experience internal consistency and integrity. Where thriving is all that, plus there's giving back to the greater good. So I think in terms of thinking about ministry, when I'm with youth, I always want to be thinking about how am I playing to their strengths? How am I leveraging resources in their environment, whether it's their parents or in the church? And how am I enabling them to contribute in experiencing a sense of efficacy and having a way to be productive and make a meaningful contribution? To me, that's all completely aligned with the gospel and the Christian story of being called, being invited into God's ongoing work in this world. And I think sometimes youth ministry misses that call. But kids are not just problems to be dealt with. They're not just vessels to be filled. My mentor said this, but they are sparks to be ignited. And I think it's a great image because when you have a lot of sparks ignited, you got a lot of light. And youth can bring a lot of light to this world. And I'd love to see the church light more sparks.